Welcome to FYI, the For-Your Innovation podcast. This show offers an intellectual discussion on technologically enabled disruption, because investing in innovation starts with understanding it. To learn more, visit ark-invest.com.
ARK Invest is a registered investment advisor focused on investing in disruptive innovation. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. It does not constitute, either explicitly or implicitly, any provision of services or products by ARK. All statements made regarding companies or securities are strictly beliefs and points of view held by ARK or podcast guests, and are not endorsements or recommendations by ARK to buy, sell, or hold any security. Clients of ARK Investment Management may maintain positions in the securities discussed in this podcast.
From ARK Invest, this is FYI, the For Your Innovation podcast. I'm Brett Winton. With me today, I have Jozef Soja. Jozef covers kind of enterprise AI for us, as well as the data center side and the neo clouds, all of the exciting stuff that's going on with enterprise. We have a great show for you today. Today, we have Jozef and I are going to talk a little bit about AI agents in the enterprise. And then we have a conversation with Dr. Alan Bekker, who was the head of conversational AI at Snap and has now started an AI tutoring company that has AI tutors that get distributed through publishers to help students learn. So, Jozef, talk to me about like AI agents in the enterprise space. How do we think about this market pricing, where it's going? What are companies doing with AI agents? And is AI agents just like a hypey term right now?
Well, it's definitely gotten a lot of hype lately, but we don't think it's going to be hypey in the long term. Right now on pricing, they're still trying out a few different models. We're seeing a combination of seat-based pricing, subscription-based pricing for a lot of agents out there. Salesforce comes to mind as an example of that. We're also seeing a lot of consumption-based pricing that people are starting to try as well, especially from the actual model providers themselves. And sometimes price per conversation comes up a lot as well. So I don't think the pricing model is set in stone at this point, but I think long-term, we definitely see it trending towards consumption-based.
But what is like a Salesforce AI agent? Even what is like a product they're trying to sell to me?
Yeah. So example of what Salesforce is selling right now is an AI chatbot that you would pay per conversation on that would engage directly with your customer on behalf of your customer support team. So instead of having a human being be the first line of defense that a customer would go to, you instead would get a conversational AI agent either through audio or through text, or in the case of companies like eSelf, who we'll be hearing from in a minute, a combination of audio and video, who will sort of be that first screen, that first line of defense to try to mitigate a customer's query before they actually have to reach and escalate to a human agent.
And what's like, how much does it cost me to spin up a Salesforce AI agent?
So right now, the most recent pricing from Salesforce is $2 per conversation, which seems kind of steep compared to where we think it's ultimately going to land. I think a lot of other conversational AI agent providers are charging more in that 50 cents to $1 range.
But that actually gets to the whole, like $2 a conversation is, that sounds roughly like what the human cost might be.
Well, yeah, even substantially lower. So part of what we've modeled, we put out an enterprise agent blog on this not too long ago, is even at a fixed cost of $1 to $2, if that agent is capable of mitigating 50%, 70%, 90% of incoming customer queries, it still represents tens of billions of dollars of savings to the actual industry compared to what it would cost in human labor.
But how do I think about it from like an ROI perspective? That I'm spending $2 to save how many dollars?
Let me pull up the exact number.
I'm making him pull up the number. Because I think that there is generally the across our AI software forecast, we have an assumption that there's going to be a productivity that AI software delivers to enterprises that use it, and kind of productivity blended across all knowledge workers that enterprises are not going to pay full freight for. They'll pay 5 or 10%. I think 5 is the official number in the forecast, meaning basically they spend $5 and they get, $100 worth of value. And so enterprises will happily dump money into that because it's huge ROI. And as a result, they'll be able to service their customers better. They'll be able to sell more stuff. They'll just be more efficiently administered and run. And so in this case, like, what's the ROI that's embedded for AI agents?
So we have some relatively aggressive assumptions in the name of conservatism in our model. So if you have a very productive human agent who's handling 50 calls or chats per day, then the average cost per human supported conversation would be about $2.87. So if you imagine you're getting maybe enterprise bulk pricing from Salesforce at $1, and that's even not assuming long-term cost declines kicking in.
Right. So then this is what is interesting is usually when enterprises pay for software, they actually don't pay nearly the productivity they get. So the 5 to 10% number that we currently have in our top-down model, which results, by the way, in, depending on how you tweak the inputs, and I think you all are too conservative on the inputs, but approaching $10 trillion in AI software spend by 2030, that actually is making an assumption that enterprises are going to get a great deal. But within the agent space, it seems as if so far enterprises are saying, well, I have this customer service function here that costs me X, and you're offering me that customer service function at Y, and Y is like 30 or 50% of the cost of X. And they're like, yes, I'll happily dump money into that. So it's actually the software in agent space seems to be able to be priced much higher to kind of capturing value from what the enterprise is getting out of it.
Do you think that trend will continue as inference costs continue to decline? I mean, do we expect sort of a proliferation of these agents to the point where it'll no longer make sense to be able to charge $1 because I can go to a competitor who will give it to me for 20 cents?
Well, I think it's like a fair question, right? Like, why would the enterprise continue to and in some ways, the enterprise is willing to pay $1 now because they have something that's cost them $2.50, and they see this as like a like-for-like replacement in terms of reliability and it's kind of like, well, and because they're just basically plugging in another function that's identical to an existing function they have in the organization, they are comfortable doing it because they feel like they could swap out and trade out to another. Almost like you hire an employee, right? Yeah. This employee costs you $2.50 a conversation. They're treating the agent as like, hey, here's replacement employee for $1 a conversation. And I know that if one's available for 10 cents, I can trade down. I think the question is that from a Salesforce perspective, like, is the enterprise, by committing to this $1 per conversation Salesforce solution, then going to get implicitly locked in on all of the data that Salesforce is able to get off of kind of those conversations that then allows them to improve the agents specific to that enterprise in a way that it becomes harder for them to swap out?
That was going to be my follow-up question to you, is how do you think that they're going to get that kind of pricing leverage in the long term to prevent this sort of race to zero in terms of the cost of these agents?
Well, I mean, ultimately, like, enterprises aren't going to be able to spend high trillions of dollars for AI software if there's not some kind of like, ultimate like revenue uplift they're getting on the back end or something like that. And so like, imagine a future circumstance where you have the customer service agent. The customer service agent is not talking to an average customer on the other end. The average customer has tasked his purchasing agent to go and actually aggressively negotiate against your customer service agent to get the best price.
Right.
If his agent is more powerful than your agent, then you're going to lose out on the negotiation. So I think that there is at least a reasonable argument that actually having a relatively weaker agent as a forward-facing entity in your enterprise exposes you to risk of getting exploited by somebody who's a sharp-elbowed negotiator who's like paying more for their AI.
There's a tangible ROI to having that cutting-edge model fight for on your behalf.
It's basically like having the best model becomes critically important, because or else you lose out on every marginal transaction in some way. You kind of like get your underlying cost of your service negotiated down to some like, vanishingly small margin, or, so it's kind of just like in the analogy is to like high frequency trading space, where it's like, it's easy to develop like a model that seems to back test very well. Right. And you're like, God, this thing is going to print money. And then you deploy it in the real world and it gets eaten alive, right? Because it's not just like a static environment in which you ship these things. Actually, the business environment and the consumer environment, I think it's going to become really aggressively competitive in a way that it hasn't been before. And so another way to think about it is it going to be enough to be like, oh, I'm just deploying kind of like this agent that's a replacement for my customer service agent, and I'm done, and then I'm going to trade down to the 10 cents a conversation agent and then the 1 cent a conversation agent. No, that's not going to be like a competitively viable stance, because the tangible example I think of is like, if you right now, the listener at home, or you, Joseph, are really sufficiently motivated, you could call your internet provider and tell them you're leaving. And they will not let you leave. They'll be like, we'll give you a discount. We'll take $20 a month off your deal. Yeah. Right?
I've had this conversation. We were talking about it beforehand. Yeah, it's
right.
Not
and
easy.
why will they do that? They will do that because there's a cost for churn for them. They have a customer acquisition cost that's in excess of like the amount that they're going to discount you, net present valued across the lifetime of a customer. And so then that's basically their policy. And depending upon how agitated you are, how credibly you can represent that you're going to leave, they will kind of happily offer that discount because it's good ROI for them. But if like the underlying assumption is that there's sweat equity that you're having to exert in order to call them to say, I'm pissed off about my bill. And if you can basically like spin up an agent to do that sweat equity for you, so your cost of that complaint suddenly falls to zero. If they don't have a customer facing function that can respond to that dynamically changing environment, then suddenly their AI agents that they're paying 10 cents a conversation for because they're saving 90 cents a conversation will happily give away the farm in discounts to these agents. And so you actually need to deploy an agent that gets more and more kind of like drills further and further into the underlying logic of what they're doing and is able to adapt in real time to market conditions that should change with a higher frequency.
I think that says a lot as well, not just about the quality of the agents, but also the scale at which they're going to be deployed. Right now, when we think about the cost of customer service in the United States, we model it based on the labor costs being around $100 billion based on Bureau of Labor statistics, things like that. But when you think about the demand for customer service, that's going to increase if you have AI agents advocating on your behalf in this way. You're not going to need the equivalent of $100 billion of human labor. You're going to need potentially orders of magnitude more than that in order to replicate, what you would otherwise have to do with humans to field all of these requests.
Right. And actually it's right now, it's kind of like the $100 billion is definitely basically how often have you actually called a company? One, you never call a company.
I try to
never
avoid
want
it.
to.
Yeah, try to avoid it as much as possible.
Like I have to get on the line with Delta is like the worst possible outcome for me. I will do anything in my power not to do that because one, I have to talk through the call tree and then yell at it to get me to the operator. Because if I could do something through the call tree, I would have done it online. So don't send me through that rabbit hole, right? And then finally you get onto like, the hold music, or we'll call you back in 45 minutes or whatever. And so basically the lack of customer service supply is disappointing the customer in this case. And so you can imagine that just in kind of like providing to the actual demand for, I need help with this thing should, increase the effective, think of it as like the number of tokens output out of that service center line actually could explode. There could be a Jevons paradox in like customer service where it's like, even today, if you buy a product and it's not working, you're definitely not going to call the company that produced the product to figure out how to work it. You search online, you ask ChatGPT. Well, conceptually, those companies shouldn't want you to go to ChatGPT to troubleshoot. They should want to own that customer relationship. They should want to be the reliable place that you can go and actually get the answer to like, why is this thing not working? And they're clearly not doing that yet today.
Right.
Well, so that's like a glance into AI agents. And in the conversation with Alan Bekker, he talks about eSelf's journey into, I'm really getting into the tutoring business, which is kind of like a narrow kind of vertically focused set of agents. How do you think about the market for kind of vertical SaaS platforms, which is kind of what he's at least initially going after, versus kind of like the broader kind of infrastructure layers underneath them?
I think there's definitely a need to have a data advantage or a tooling advantage if you're going to go into that kind of a vertical. As it currently stands, I mean, a lot of the frontier models are getting so good across the board that if you want to have that kind of success in a specific vertical, there needs to be some sort of differentiation in terms of unique data or a platform that's very hard to move off of. So I think right now those are the challenges facing companies that want to produce a strong verticalized product for their AI agents.
Right. At a high level, kind of there's the software as a service layer that's at the top of the stack.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's platform as a service, which, think of it as like the tools that software as a service companies use to like effectively run their service and kind of like to tap into the infrastructure as a service layer. And then there's infrastructure as a service. And then there's a whole boatload of NVIDIA chips underlying all of that. Okay. And others. And so kind of our top line forecast, which again, leads to the, high single digit trillions, potentially even exceeding 10, if you take my point of view, in AI software spend by 2030, has a waterfall of revenue into that software as a service layer, platform as a service layer, infrastructure as a service layer. And software as a service is effectively losing share to the layers lower in the stack.
Right. Especially as AI democratizes the ability to actually build your own homegrown applications. It's not that we expect software as a service to decline. We still think it's going to be a beneficiary in the long term of AI. But that platform layer that people are actually going to be using to build custom software projects instead of sort of the one-size-fits-none software that's often offered today, we expect that to accelerate more significantly.
Yeah, I was thinking about it today where, the cost... The cost to learn a new software is relatively constant, right? Particularly a new software that wasn't designed AI first. So maybe this changes for software that arises AI first, but the cost to learn a software as a service product is constant, but the cost to create your own is falling like a knife. Right. So there's, depending on the complexity of the application, there's definitely a crossover point where it's like literally cheaper for you to custom build the software because it'll work exactly how you want it to versus having to learn how somebody else designed the software to achieve the specific thing you need.
Yeah, I mean, even internally at ARK, we've spent a decent amount of time vibe coding applications lately, and the amount of time that it takes is often, like you say, it's still a time saving relative to buying or learning a software out of the box.
Right. And you have the benefit if you develop it yourself where it's like, hey, we need this additional functionality. Right. You can build it, kind of just glom it on.
Exactly. It's highly customizable, right? There's no limit. You don't have to go through the process of working directly with engineers at the company that you're buying from, if they'll even give you the time of day.
Right. Yeah. And in some ways, it's like, if you think about like even bigger software as a service platforms, it's like, to learn all of the capabilities the platform has takes a substantial amount of time. So you pay this full price for this full suite of software, but you only learn and begin by using 10% of it. And their strategy is, you'll expand over time into all these different verticals or all these different things that we have. Well, if you can like actually on the fly generate the software you need for that 10% of use case, and then you can build the additional capabilities you want as you need them, it potentially provides a better solution for the enterprise. And so that accrues to the benefit of the likes of Palantir, of the likes of AWS, where kind of like the custom software layer has to live on some substrate, and they provide that to the enterprise.
Right. And the employee-friendly platform to actually build those applications in as well.
Right. And yes, Replit as well as turns everybody into a developer. We had a hackathon where every single member of ARK was building an app. Yeah. Executive assistants, the whole boat, even our CFO. Okay. I don't know why I called out Paul like that, but I don't think he's coded before. Okay.
Oh, I mean, but to your point, a lot of us at ARK hadn't, right? And to see everybody from the organization be able to spin up, in some cases, usable products that will actually help us save time internally. demonstrates the democratization potential here.
Right. Well, enjoy the conversation with Dr. Alan Bekker and check out eSelf.ai. Jozef, thanks for coming on the pod.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome to FYI, the For Your Innovation podcast. Dr. Alan Bekker, welcome. You have a PhD in conversational AI. Is that really true? You founded Voca.ai, which was like a voice agent company that Snapchat acquired. And so then you were in Snapchat's AI team and developed the software that are the seeds there of what's running their AI kind of chatbot product. And now you founded eSelf.ai. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey guys, it's a pleasure to be here today with you guys. Yes, I'm Alan Bekker. I'm the CEO and co-founder of eSelf.ai. My background is in technology. I did a PhD in the field of machine learning and deep learning, published 10 papers in the field of speech technologies, computer vision, and conversational AI. Then I founded a company named Voca, which we provided voice agents for call centers. We had huge customers like American Express and AT&T. They were using our AI technology from 2018 until 2020 to power their call centers. And at the end of 2020, my company Voca was acquired by Snapchat. And then I became the head of conversational AI at Snap, leading the conversational AI efforts in the early days of the LLMs revolution. Before we had the LLMs, they were just n-gram-based language models, and then neural-based language models. And then once ChatGPT was out to the market, the industry started to call it large language models, just because they were like really large deep learning neural networks. So I was fortunate enough to be running a company back then, and then to run the conversational AI at Snap back then, and to see the impact from the inside at Snap with 500 million daily active users. So that's me.
So yeah, starting Voca in 2017, there was like a total transformation of the underlying technology stack, along the way. How both with eSelf, where you are now, and having technology still changing very rapidly underneath you, and in the transition to moving to Snap, like how did you as a leader and entrepreneur respond to that underlying kind of architecture change, and how are you coping with that now?
Yeah, it's a great question. So when we started Voca, obviously LLMs were not out there. And not even LLMs, no one had, I think, ever built a neural-based language model back then. We used to have n-grams, and the first, I would say, the NLU engine that we had back then at the beginning was based on the, intent classification and name entity recognition kind of things. So what people were using, like BERT and Elmo, those models that Google released in 2017. But we actually, if you think about it, back then we had a conversational graph. It sounds crazy today, but imagine that we had a studio that for each customer, we built manually a conversational graph. You can imagine if the user says A, then answer this respond. Otherwise, this responds. Then we have
It was a choose your own adventure for the user to enter in the dialogue, right?
Basically. Exactly. It was a decision tree, actually, that the way that the users can move from one node to the other was based on AI and intent classification and so on. But the thing is that every customer, it required a lot of attention. And we had huge scalability issues. That's the truth, right? I mean, we powered American Express and AT&T with few use cases that they were scalable because the number of conversations was high. But our ability back then to have many clients, as we have today, or it was possible a few years ago, that's something that didn't happen back then. So. But when we established Voca, I'm not sure that you guys would remember that it was in 2018. The speech text engines, they were so bad. I mean, the Google ASRs of the world, they were really bad. So It's not only that we had a conversation graph which wasn't scalable. Even the speech to text engine, which is the most crucial part to have a conversation to understand the other side, it wasn't working well. And the text to speech engine, we don't even need to think about it. I mean, it was like really not human-like text to speech engine. So we started from scratch, and we started to see that the speech to text is not good enough, especially not for telephony, because we were powering call centers. So we were using 8 kilohertz sample rate, not 16. So we had to train our own AI speech models. As most of the time, we invested in speech technologies. That's the truth, and either the speech to text and text to speech engine. And the NLU part, we had our limitations back then. We did what we could. That's the truth. But someday, it was actually after we got acquired by Snap. One day, so simultaneously, the speech to text and text to speech engines, they started to be much better, and it was much easier to do a proper conversation in which at least you can understand the user. It doesn't mean that you can respond whatever you want, because if you have a conversation graph, you can't go out of the graph. You know what I mean? You always have predefined responses. Right. But one day, we were working on Snap and our LLMs. And one day, a guy from OpenAI, he reached out to me. And to be honest, that was the first time I heard about OpenAI. And he told me, we are looking for design partners for our GPT LLM. Do you guys want to be our design partner? And then I read about OpenAI, and it was 2021. And yeah, I mean, OpenAI back then, I think they raised $1 billion. They were still a fully non-profit organization. And I was like, it was my role at Snap to be leading the conversational AI effort. So besides developing it by ourselves, so we obviously wanted to see what the market has to offer. So we said, yeah, why not? And then they gave us a model, which eventually was the ChatGPT-1. Okay, we didn't call it back then GPT-1 because it was just GPT LLM. This is the way they call it. And they let us play with it. And I started to play with it, and I was in shock. I mean, you have a neural-based model in which you can just give it a prompt. I mean, and what is a prompt? It sounds like it's something. A prompt is actually part of the input that you give to the chat. So you just write, behave like, I don't know, a storytelling AI agent, and start the conversation. And I see that we have in front of me like a chatbot that actually he complies with the prompt that I give to him, and he actually has a conversation that makes sense. And I was like, oh my God, so all the graphs that we built back then, obviously we can throw them away and start using neural-based language models.
It's almost a problem though, right? If you've spent a lot of time building like the conversational graph, like you have lots of data that's gone into building that, and then suddenly this company comes in with an API you can plug into, which basically makes all of that work obsolete almost instantaneously, right? So then, I mean, clearly, Snap has a distribution engine that allows it to kind of like deliver that capability to end users, and they enjoy that. But then how do you think about that even within the context of kind of like eSelf, where you've gone from voice only to, hey, now we're going to do voice and video? How do you think about the relationship with the underlying models and the degree to which you can kind of just build on whatever the cutting edge is there versus needing to kind of build stuff yourself, maybe?
Yeah. If you don't mind, if you let me rephrase your question, because I think I understand what you're asking. You're asking is that you were lucky because Snap acquired your company before the LLMs revolution. But how can you assure yourself that you won't be lucky twice? You need to do something that because let's say OpenAI releases tomorrow a face-to-face API. So how you can protect yourself? I think that's the question that you're actually asking, and I also ask myself all the time. And the answer to that, I believe it's that we are working very hard to be vertically integrated. So At Voca, we were quite lucky. That's the truth. First, they acquired us before the LLMs were out, and we had a lot of IP around conversation graphs and so on. And if the truth is that if the LLMs were out before the acquisition, probably Snap they wouldn't be acquiring my company. So we were lucky, that's for sure. And today, how can I know? And I don't know. OpenAI might release an API for face-to-face conversations. But what we're doing is that we're building on top of our technology a highly vertical integrated solution for the educational space. That's the truth. So when eSelf started, we started as a horizontal platform. And the reason why we did it is because we wanted to learn which use cases for face-to-face are the best ones. So we did a lot of
by horizontal platform. You mean you have eSelf for, everybody can go to the website and sign up their own virtual agent that will talk to their customers, basically via video, and it's an AI agent. And there's education applications, and there's customer service applications, and there's financial advisor applications. And so you, the business, I, the business, could spin up no matter what business I'm in, I could spin up an agent that becomes the kind of customer service agent of that business. Does that describe it well?
Yeah, I will fine tune it a little bit. We provided a platform which allowed any industry in the world to create their own AI agent, whether it's for education, finance, customer service, telco, and whatever, right? And the purpose of this platform was for us to learn what are people actually doing with the platform. That's something that we were interested in. I mean, we have a great technology in place, and we know that in terms of face-to-face conversation, we are leading from a tech point of view the market. But we know that in the long term, having the best tech is not a moat, because we might have a huge competition coming from the big tech companies, right? So we wanted to learn, and we wanted to let the customers experiment. And we wanted to talk with them to see what we are solving to every industry and how much they're willing to pay for it. Okay, that was my goal. So we let our customers play with it, and we had many customers, and we still have many customers. But we got into an understanding that the face-to-face component and the highest value that we provide is in a very specific industry. It's not in customer service. It's not in sales. It's actually in education. Now, I can, obviously, retrospectively explain why, but it's something that we saw from the data. We saw the number of customers that reach out. We saw the number of customers how much they're willing to pay, and we saw the scalability opportunities that we have. So after this experimental phase, eSelf decided to be a vertical solution of face-to-face private tutoring for education.
Is this B2C or this is like B2B? As in, is there a private tutoring companies are using eSelf to power their virtual tutors? Is that the way it's working?
So as a go-to-market strategy, our long-term goal is to go B2C. But before we do that, we decided to start with B2B2C. And I'll explain you what we're doing and why we're doing. So the way the educational world works is that, you have the educational ministries, governmental educational budget, which usually is huge. But the sales cycle is crazy, right? It may take 2 or 3 years to close a deal with the government. So that we took it out of the table, right? Then you have schools. You can sell directly to schools, but the sales cycle, it's 6 months or even 8 months. And the check size is really small because, if I have, 500 students, how much I can pay for it? 10K a year, 20K? Doesn't make sense to close those small deals. But between the government and the schools, you have a mid-layer of players that they move much faster. And you have 2 types of players. The first player is the publishers. Publishers is, for example, educational content company that they used to sell books to the schools, So, for example, you have an educational publisher. Most, like in the US, for example, you have 30 publishers, and each publisher serves like 2 million, 3 million of students a year. And they sell to the schools, the content, the books, the physical books, the online books to the schools. So as a go-to-market strategy, we decided to start with the publishers because they act as an amazing distribution channel for us. Because we close one deal with a publisher, but those publishers, they serve millions of students.
Sure.
We do a B2B2C move, and we started to do it in different regions in the world. And so far, it's working great. Those publishers actually they move quite big, quite fast, even though they're big, and they have the budget to pay for technology, and they are very keen to adopt new technologies. So that's the way that we implemented our go-to-market.
On that question of budget, how are you thinking about pricing in the long term for these kinds of tools? I mean, one of the conversations we've had internally is as inference prices fall for AI agents, is that something that you view as something that's just going to be an opportunity to grow margins over time, or to maybe instead use that as a means of gaining real estate? Or just, big picture, how are you thinking about the long-term pricing for AI video agents?
Yeah, so today, the LLM companies, the foundational companies, they are subsidizing the API calls by VC money. That's the truth, right? So all of them, they're like on the paper losing money. But they don't care because they raised billions and billions of dollars. So actually, the VCs are actually fundraising the application layers companies, and the application layer companies can have lower cost and so on and so forth. But to the end customer, they don't care. I mean, the end-to-end solution, they don't care whether you pay for it. Your cost is 1 cent per minute or it's $1 per minute. They don't care. They care about the end product. So as of today, we make sure that we profitable per customer. I mean, our VC's money is not actually funding our customers. I mean, we are profitable from day one.
I assume then the pricing model must be something on an engagement side, like as in it's basically you have a number of tokens that you're using, right? And you're charging some amount per hour or something. Like tangibly, what does it work out to if I spend like half an hour tutoring session with an AI agent? What is the cost of that roughly?
Yes. So the way we charge our customers, we charge per student per month. Our pricing model, it's I would say a statistically based model in which we assume that there will be students that will use it all the time, and there will be students that won't use it at all, like every distribution, normal distribution. And so we are assuming a statistical model of usage. We are not selling a private tutor per minute or per hour because it's not the way the market works. I mean, so we sell a live
because the publisher thinks about it. Like it's probably the publishers is selling books in, right? And they're selling books with or content with associated
exactly
tutoring, like attached tutoring. So they think of it as a unit sale with attached tutoring. So they don't want to end up with some kind of liability against people using your tool a lot, right? They want to sell it in the pricing they're comfortable with.
Sure, charging per actual usage, it's a nightmare, like accounting nightmare for every party. So, and the way the publishers sell it, they sell per month per student. So we do the same. So the only way we do the translation behind the screens, a statistical translation of usage versus average usage per student, and this is how we price it.
For us, we think of the market for agents generally as being really an interesting market because, like you say, if you cross a certain threshold, it's like the comparison for the publisher or for the school system that's buying the material is what would this student have to pay for a human tutor for an hour, like $25 or something. It depends on how talented the tutor is. It could be 50, depends on the country too, right? And so if this publisher is providing like bundled tutoring services for the student, like, even if it works to an effective like $5 an hour, it's a huge value for the students, right? And so kind of like there's potentially a lot of pricing room if it once you cross a threshold of utility where it really is like talking to an expert tutor. Do you think that where your product is today, or where you anticipated it being in a reasonable short time frame, it really is like an expert tutor? Or is there still work on kind of like the underlying utility of the system that you need to do to like cross that threshold?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we speak about it all the time. So my end goal is to be a direct to consumer product, and in a direct to consumer product, yes, you can charge per hour because that's the way they pay today. They go to a private tutor and they pay, as you said, most of the countries. For a decent math teacher or English teacher, you would pay probably $40 an hour. That's like the average in the world, like in Europe, US, and and also Middle East. So charging 5 hours per hour, $5 per hour makes sense. But you need the product to be exceptional. And we the way I envision it, I believe in 1 year from now, our product will be in a certain level that will be we have a comparable learning experience as a human, and then we will be able to provide a direct to consumer value and charge per hour as well. Until then, we are working through the distribution channels with publishers, and they are not offering it necessarily as a replacement to the private tutor. They are mostly offering it as an enhancement of like a top add-on on top of the book. Like the positioning, the way they position it is not yet a replacement for the private tutor, because they don't really competing with private tutors anyway. So they're selling as an add-on to the book.
Right. It's like, here's this math section. You want to learn more, and you can click in and talk to the tutor to like help you learn more, right?
Exactly. It's exactly like today that you give the book and they also give you a link to their LMS to watch videos or whatever. So it's another add-on on top of it. It's a very cool add-on. It's a great add-on, but it's still an add-on. They're not promoting it as a private tutor to the student.
What are the improvements you think need to be made over the next year to get to that point where it can be competitive to a human? Is it more on the sort of tooling side of things? I know some of your models have access to visualizations or YouTube videos, things like that. Or do you think there are still improvements that need to be made in the underlying video or audio models themselves?
So we built the technology in that way that we are LLM agnostic, and we did it in purpose. All the rest it was developed in-house, from the voice models to the video generation model, like the lip sync of the avatar model was built in-house. I think two things need to happen to reach the level of the B2C market that we're waiting for. The first one, I believe the LLMs still need to improve a little bit to be able to have more intelligent conversations. The LLMs are great. They're great at coding. They're great in many specific tasks, but to handle like tutoring experience, they still need to have a little bit more of, I would say, intelligence. That's one thing that in purpose we did it. We wanted to leverage the LLMs that the OpenAIs and Googles and Anthropic of the world are doing, to leverage them to eSelf. The second thing that must happen, it's something that nobody is talking about it, but we provide a real-time interaction. And as of today, there's still an issue with real-time interaction, because like the reasoning models, like the smarter models, they're not real-time. They're not really performing real-time. So we need to somehow compromise as of today to provide a real-time interaction, which is like the best way to communicate in education. We need to compromise with some of the models to be able to interact in real time. So that's something that I believe in as long as we move forward, the best models will be, the models will be improved, and also but the new ones also we have a lower latency as well. That's what kind of I think the main breakthroughs that we are at eSelf betting that will happen soon. And I believe in 1 year or so we'll be there, and we'll be able to provide near human-like private tutor experience to the B2C market.
It's kind of interesting that you say that, because for me, it's like ChatGPT voice mode is quite useful in contexts where I can't be in front of a screen, as in like I use it all the time, even to to spin up on a subject, I'll begin to talk to it. And, you can hit kind of the limits of its knowledge and need to flex into something like a call it more latent model, or a model that's not available to voice. But it seems quite performant. And in some ways, you're having to make a compromise. There's some kind of compromise that is having to be made because you're doing voice and video. But you very explicitly did video here. Why doesn't the thing that the student actually need is just the information conveyed by voice and the vocal interaction, and then maybe an interactive screen? Or is it important to have like the embodied presence in order to make the product compelling?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, like regarding what you said, the latency issue is not about the video. I mean, the throughput that we have for video generation it's faster than the throughput that we have for voice generation. So it's not, the limitation that is not coming from the visual generation necessarily. Actually, the limitation is coming mainly from the LLM generation throughput. And yeah, like in the voice mode, you might suffer from 2-3 seconds of latency, but they're not using reasoning models and like more and better models. And so, for example, if you try to solve like mathematical questions with the voice mode, you will start to see some cracks there. You will see that it's not performing well. I mean. But yeah, like for having a chit chat, obviously it's great. But for teaching a subject which is a complex subject, you need to have a smarter model behind the screens. But back to your second question, you said, do we really need like embodied avatar to do education? Why shouldn't just do like voice to voice, like with some visualization, right? So I believe the feedback that we got from the educational industry, and I spoke with probably hundreds of publishers, school managers, teachers, and so on, is that actually having the presence of an AI that has a face, that the student can connect, can it's something that it's crucial for education. It's crucial not only to visualize the learning through like having a board on mathematics, show the equations, like, or even generating images on the fly, but actually have a AI tutor that it's not only a tutor, it's also like a companion in some way. Once you have a face, it's not only a tutor, it's a companion. It's a bit something between a friend to someone that teach you something. So having a face, it's something that we see in the industry perceives it as something that it's completely groundbreaking, and it's mandatory to provide an outstanding experience to the students.
Yeah. If I think about like what would be the strategic set of assets you could develop with kind of like the tutoring, like basically tutoring distribution, it's or teaching is not just conveying information, it's also assessing whether or not the student knows the information. And so whereas a publisher might approach it from a publisher's perspective, it's like, here's the textbook, and hey, you can learn more about this from this like tutoring thing that appears here. In making the transition to go purely B2C, the important step there is to actually guide the student towards the material they don't yet know, and help them to spin up and know that they know the material that they're learning. So is that something that you're actively working on now? or is it in the strategic plan? Like, how do you think about, and is kind of like you created a horizontal platform, but now you're kind of like being drawn into this vertical. Is the thrust of the business to like try to build out this vertical in a really deep way?
So the strategy is quite simple. I mean, we are working with the publishers as design partners, actually, to customize the face-to-face platform that we built to be highly vertical oriented, and to provide not only like the best tech in the market, but to provide the right pedagogical way to interact with students. And that's something that we are learning a lot from working with the publishers. If you think about it, one of the main features, or I would say one of the main moats that we are building, is the ability to have the AI to personalize himself to the student. Yeah, like working with publishers and on top of the content of the publishers is great. But if you ask in a B2C move, do we really need to work with the content of the publishers? No. I mean, a math book, for example. Do you really think that this specific math books know something that the LLM doesn't know? No, not really, right? I mean, the LLM knows history better than the books of history. The LLM knows better math than this specific book of math. So what you're really gaining from interaction with the publishers is not the content, is the personalization of the AI tutor to the students. They're working for us as amazing design partners to personalize and to create the right pedagogical aspects of our products. So once we go to the B2C, we leverage it to the market without really the need to use the books. Because, books, I think they understand it as well. Books are gone, right? Nobody really needs more textbooks. Right. The LLM knows the textbooks. So it was trained on the textbooks, actually. So, right?
Yeah. If I'm a publisher of a textbook, I'm not actually responsible for making sure the student gets it. Like the educational institutions take the textbook in and then they have teachers and stuff. But I think the shift is going to be you could imagine somebody, or there's the paper on the Nigerian students that managed to, I think they got 2 years of schooling in 10 weeks of tutoring, or, it's you can basically accelerate your knowledge acquisition with these tools. That's very clear. And so then packaged in a way where it not only conveys the information to the students, but then also keeps track of what they know. It in some ways could disrupt, not just the textbook publishers but the schools themselves. And it's why am I going to a group study spot when I can get the skills more quickly using an individual tool?
I agree. I think if you think about it deeply, schools and universities, since the first day, there wasn't necessarily a place that you go to study. You go to socialize. You go to school to socialize, and you go to university to socialize. I never studied at school or university. I always came back home and opened the textbook by myself, or read it in the internet, right? Or watch the videos in Coursera or whatever. And it was the truth 10 years ago. It will be the truth, the reality in 10 years from now. People will go to schools and to universities to be with other friends, not necessarily to gain the information. The information is with the AI revolution is democratized. We live in a world without experts. There are no experts anymore. We only are humans, and we can connect between each other in a deeply emotional way. But the information that I have or you have, it's democratized. The LLM knows everything, and this will obviously revolutionize the way schools and universities work, because they will also understand the information. They are not the source of the information. The source is out there, but they go to school to have friends.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Alan, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast, and hopefully I'll be learning from the eSelf's tutors in the near future.
Thank you. I hope so, and I'm sure you also will learn about it more.
Thank you for joining FYI, the For Your Innovation podcast. Please subscribe, rate us 5 stars, give us comments, or enlist an AI agent to give us comments on your behalf. Thanks for joining.
ARK believes that the information presented is accurate and was obtained from sources that ARK believes to be reliable. However, ARK does not guarantee the accuracy or completeness of any information, and such information may be subject to change without notice from ARK. Historical results are not indications of future results. Certain of the statements contained in this podcast may be statements of future expectations and other forward-looking statements that are based on ARK's current views and assumptions, and involve known and unknown risks and uncertainties that could cause actual results, performance, or events to differ materially from those expressed or implied in such statements.